The plane hummed steadily at 30,000 feet, a silver bird slicing through clouds painted gold by the afternoon sun. Inside, passengers shifted in their seats, some dozing, some tapping away on glowing screens, others flipping through worn magazines. It was ordinary, quiet, the kind of calm where you almost forget you're suspended miles above the earth. Then the captain's voice came over the speakers. His tone was warm, practiced, reassuring, until it wasn't. His words stuttered, broke off mid-sentence, and the intercom clicked into silence. A pause fell. A few people chuckled nervously, assuming some kind of technical hiccup. But then came the sound. Muffled gasps, hurried footsteps from the cockpit. A flight attendant ran past, face pale, eyes wide. Whispers spread like wildfire. The captain and co-pilot had collapsed. The cabin shifted from calm to chaos in a heartbeat. A woman clutched her child tighter. A man reached for the call button again and again, as though pressing it hard enough could summon control back to the world. Someone shouted, "What's happening?" Voices overlapped, rising, feeding on one another. Fear is contagious, and it raced through the cabin faster than the jet itself. And then, in the middle of it all, seat 14A moved. Slowly, quietly at first. A girl stood, 12 years old, small, but not fragile. She had eyes that caught the light, steady in a way that didn't belong to a child. Her father reached for her wrist instinctively. He was a tall man, the kind who carried authority in every step. CEO, decision-maker, single parent who built an empire while raising her alone. But at that moment, his voice cracked with something raw. "Sweetheart, sit down, please." She didn't. The girl looked toward the front of the plane, where the cockpit door stood ajar, where fear had carved itself into every adult face. She remembered the countless nights at home when her father, exhausted but devoted, had set up the flight simulator for her on his computer. It started as a game, a distraction, but she had studied every dial, every sound, every sequence of buttons like it was her second language. He used to laugh and say, "You'll be a pilot before you're a teenager." It was meant as a joke. No one thought the day would come when lives would depend on it. The passengers noticed her then. Some frowned in disbelief. A few murmured, "What is she doing?" Others shook their heads. Surely this was no time for a child to step forward. But there was something undeniable in her walk, something that made the crowded cabin part slightly, like waves opening for a small but determined ship. She wasn't running, she wasn't trembling. Each step was deliberate. Her father rose, heart pounding. He wanted to protect her, shield her, beg her not to do this. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw no panic. He saw focus, resolve, something even he, in all his boardrooms and battles, couldn't summon in this moment. He swallowed his fear, words catching in his throat. The intercom crackled again, a frantic voice from air traffic control reaching the crew's headset but carrying faintly into the cabin. "We need someone to take control of the aircraft. Anyone with flying experience, do you copy?" No one moved. No adult spoke up, except her. The girl turned her head slightly toward her father, her voice low but steady. "I can do it." Gasps rippled around her. A woman covered her mouth. A man muttered, "This is madness." Yet no one else was stepping forward. No one else even tried. Her father closed his eyes for half a second, as though fighting an impossible decision. When he opened them again, he didn't see his little girl. He saw the only person on this plane brave enough to try. His hand trembled as he let go of her wrist. And then, she walked, not as a passenger, not as a child, but as the single spark of hope in a cabin drowning in fear. The cockpit door closed behind her with a heavy click, shutting out the noise of panicked passengers but trapping her inside a world of flashing lights and shrill alarms. The air was different here, hotter, tighter, filled with the sharp scent of metal and wires. Two pilots slumped unconscious in their seats, their bodies frighteningly still. Their hands dangled uselessly over the controls, faces pale beneath the harsh glow of the instrument panels. For a second, the girl's breath caught. They weren't just sick. They were gone to a place where she couldn't reach them. It was only her now. Her hands shook as she slid into the captain's chair, her feet dangling above the pedals. The seat felt enormous, built for someone twice her size, yet it was hers for this moment. Alarms screamed in her ears, bright red symbols blinking across the panels like angry eyes demanding answers. The girl forced her small fingers onto the yoke. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "Breathe, steady." In the headset dangling nearby, a voice broke through the static, firm, urgent, with the weight of the world behind every syllable. "This is air traffic control. We have confirmation both pilots are incapacitated. Who is in command of the aircraft?" Her mouth was dry, her voice cracked as she pressed the button. I'm here. My name's Emma. I'm 12. The silence that followed was almost worse than the alarms. Then the voice returned, slower now, careful. "Emma. Okay, listen to me. We're going to help you. Can you tell me, do you have any flying experience?" She swallowed. "Flight simulators. At home. I know some things." The controller paused, then replied, "That's more than most." "Okay, Emma, you need to trust me, and I'll trust you. You're in control now." Her fingers tightened around the yoke. The plane trembled beneath her, a giant alive, restless, threatening to slip from her grasp. She tried to remember the lessons her father had taught her late at night, when the world outside their windows was quiet and it was just them, the hum of the simulator filling the room. How to keep the nose steady. How to read the altimeter. How to breathe through fear. The girl scanned the instruments. Altitude. 30,000 feet. Heading. East. Airspeed. Too fast. Her heart hammered louder than the alarms. Behind her, faintly, she could still hear the cries of passengers. Every sound reminded her that it wasn't a game this time. Every life depended on her. "Okay, Emma," the controller said, his voice softer now, almost fatherly. "First, I need you to place your feet on the rudder pedals. Can you reach?" She stretched, straining her legs, toes brushing the cool metal. "Barely, but enough." "Yes," she said. "Good. Now, keep the wings level. Just gentle pressure, like you're holding a bird you don't want to hurt." Her grip steadied. The trembling in her hands faded just enough for the yoke to obey her. The plane's shuddering eased. For a flicker of a moment, she felt control, thin as a thread, but real. But then turbulence struck. The jet jolted violently, tossing her against the straps, making her teeth clack together. She cried out, but her hands didn't let go. The alarms screamed louder. Her eyes stung, blurring, but she blinked hard. "Focus," she whispered. "Focus, Emma." The voice in her headset urged, "You're doing it. Don't fight the plane. Guide it. Trust yourself." Her chest rose and fell, each breath a battle. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you try anyway." She gritted her teeth, straightened the nose, adjusted the throttle the way she remembered. Slowly, the shuddering smoothed. The horizon leveled on the screen before her. A fragile calm returned. For the first time since stepping into the cockpit, she allowed herself to believe. Maybe, just maybe, she could bring them home. The runway appeared first as a thin silver line far in the distance, almost swallowed by clouds. Emma's heart skipped at the sight of it. That strip of concrete was the difference between life and death, and it looked impossibly small from where she sat. Her palms were slick with sweat as she clutched the yoke tighter, afraid that even a breath too strong could ruin everything. The voice in her headset guided her steadily, calm but urgent. "You're on final approach, Emma. You're lined up. Stay focused. Gentle adjustments now." The plane rumbled, the engines roaring like beasts that didn't want to be tamed. The passengers behind her held their breath, the entire cabin pressed into silence broken only by the occasional sob or whispered prayer. Some clutched hands, some closed their eyes, others stared at the cockpit door as though willing the girl inside to succeed. They had no control, all they had was faith in a 12-year-old child. Her father stood just outside the cockpit, unable to enter, but close enough to hear her trembling voice through the gap. His hands were clasped so tightly they shook. He had spent his life solving impossible problems, but this was the first time he had no power. All he could do was whisper under his breath, again and again, "Come on, sweetheart. You can do this." The wheels of the plane lowered with a heavy thud, the sound echoing through the fuselage. Emma bit her lip, keeping her eyes fixed on the horizon. The runway grew larger, clearer, realer with every passing second. The ground rushed toward them faster than she expected. Her chest tightened. For a heartbeat, panic surged. What if she didn't slow down in time? What if the nose tilted too steeply? What if? No what ifs, she said to herself. Her voice was small but fierce. "Just do it." She pulled gently, exactly as she remembered from the simulator. The nose tilted, the descent eased. The plane obeyed her, heavy but responsive, like a giant finally trusting the hands of its unlikely pilot. The landing gear aligned with the runway's painted lines, glowing under the floodlights. "Steady, Emma," the controller's voice urged. "Flare gently, now." The ground met them with a violent jolt. The wheels screamed, rubber burning as sparks shot briefly from the friction. The plane bounced once, hard enough to make passengers cry out, but Emma held her grip. She pulled back just enough, correcting, guiding. The second contact was smoother. The massive machine roared down the runway, brakes shrieking, engines winding down in protest. Every nerve in her body screamed with the effort of holding it together. And then, slowly, impossibly, the speed fell. The world outside the window steadied. The giant metal bird, carrying hundreds of terrified souls, came to a complete stop. Silence. For one terrible second, no one moved, as though afraid that breathing might undo the miracle. Then the cabin erupted. Cheers, sobs, laughter that shook with disbelief. Strangers hugged each other, tears streaming down their faces. Applause thundered through the plane, echoing louder than the engines ever had. Emma slumped back in the captain's chair, her small chest rising and falling like she had just finished running the longest race of her life. Her hands trembled violently now, not from fear but from the release of it. She pulled the headset away, tears welling, though she tried to blink them back. Her father burst through the cockpit door at last. He didn't care about the rules, didn't care about the eyes of everyone watching. He dropped to his knees beside the chair and wrapped his daughter in his arms. His voice broke against her ear. "You didn't just save us, Emma. You saved me. You showed me what real courage is." She buried her face against him, exhausted but smiling through the tears. Around them, passengers pressed closer, not to intrude but to see the girl who had turned their nightmare into a miracle. In their eyes, she wasn't a child anymore. She was a hero. When the doors finally opened and the passengers stepped onto the runway, the night air felt different, colder, sharper, alive with the echo of what had just happened. Reporters, emergency crews, officials rushed forward, but for Emma, it was all a blur. What mattered was the sound of her father's steady heartbeat as he held her hand, the weight of his pride heavier than any applause. And as they walked down the steps together, the world looking on in awe, she whispered to him, just loud enough for him to hear. "I think I was born to fly." And for the first time in his life, the man who had always led, always decided, always been the strongest one, realized something with complete certainty: his daughter's wings would carry her farther than he had ever dreamed.